Hello, Sid here, and welcome to the Drunken Ork. Now, you may be aware that as well as this incredibly slick and professional channel that I provide on the YouTubes, I have also been known to take a walk on the dark side of other social media platforms, namely Instagram, although I have also been known to frequent the chaotic rages of Reddit and dip me toe on Twitter. I will then remove me toe from Twitter, disinfect it thoroughly, and just for good measure snip it off with bolt cutters, because Twitter is rotten. Rotten. I don't like Twitter. It's confusing, and it just seems to be arguments and nastiness, and I've got no time for that. At least Reddit's just random rages. You know, it just seems to be kicking off with anyone. But anyway, this is not what this is about. It's not what this is about. Earlier this year, somebody on Instagram, who I should call Carl, because that is his name, approached us, and I've been sort of, I've known Carl for quite a while on Instagram. He's a regular commenter and liker of my posts. I'm a big fan of his work as well, to be fair. He's very talented. And he approached me and asked me if I'd be interested in doing a commission for him. He had a friend who had a milestone birthday coming up, and he wanted me to do a Warboss, a Freebooter Warboss no less. Now, I've not done commission work before. I've been asked a number of times if I'd be interested in selling any of my builds, or particular builds anyway, and I've never really thought of doing that because I've built them for me to use. But I thought, Carl's a nice lad. I'd like to help him out. And yeah, it might be quite interesting to do something with the prime sort of goal to be to give it away at the end. So I sat down to do the Warboss. Now, the Warboss was a freebooter, as I mentioned. And when I think freebooters, I think fat. I want to do a fat Warboss. I think fat orcs are brilliant. Now, I know in some of the lore, people say, you get fat when you get knocked up by Imperial Guards, and they're sad. Fat orcs are depressed orc. No, I think Bad Moon orcs and Freebooter orcs can be fat. I think it suits them quite well. And I do like a goth orc with a big fat belly as well. Think Eddie Hall sort of fat. Not kind of, Ralphie May, big butter mountains, but, just big, still hench, but carrying a bit of timber as well. And it would be dead easy just to get in one of the knob bodies to do this, but they're not really fat enough. So I thought, where am I going to find the perfect mixture of fatness and also muscularity? So I know some of you are screaming ogres, probably over 30s. If you're under 30, you're probably screaming ogres, which these are both right. Just one is more right than the other. And I'll leave it up to you to figure out which one that is. So anyway, yes, I did go with the ogre miniatures. A resin one, in fact. So let's have a look through the build. So there we go. That is the body of an ogre's man-eater, I believe, from, it's not Forge World, but it is Finecast. No, I'd never worked with Finecast before. I had heard the stories. I heard it was fantastically underrated. No, obviously not. It was, I've heard it was shite. But I thought I'd give it a shot. Now, I had to cut some of the model off because there's only the body and the left arm I wanted to use. So I had to patch it up with green stuff. As you can see, green stuff work isn't exactly superb, but it certainly fills the gaps and replaced the part of the waistcoat that was cut away when I removed his parrot. And this is the arm I wanted to use. Now, this arm is off, I'm not sure which mini it's off exactly, but it's off one of the RTLW Iron Nukers, I think they call them. Basically mega knobs, and they are big, chunky lads, and the arm was one of the only arms that were big enough to fit on it. Now, I wanted the Ork Warboss to have a bit of I didn't want him fully armoured, but I didn't want him unarmoured. Whereas the man-eater body is mostly just pants and jacket with a few plates. This arm is fully armoured. Now, that suited me down to the ground. And plus, he has a big, chunky 3-barreled gun. As far as the head goes, the Flashgate kit has a lot of heads modelled on Ork knobs, which have got pirate hats on, and they're a perfect size for this. Not too big, not too small. So I went with one of those. There's a little test fit with the arm. Obviously, there's some gaps to fill in there, which I've done later. And the raised hand, which originally had a cutlass, I trimmed the cutlass away and fitted him with a big chopper. Now the big chopper is the one off the knob on the Warbikers kit. Obviously I pinned that through the hand and into both ends of the chopper just so it's not going to get knocked and snap off. There he is from the back. As you can see, I patched in the gaps on the arm and then stuck a shoulder pad on top just to give him a little bit extra armour. And there's an additional armour plate on the back of his arm riveted straight into the flesh, which is somewhere to attach the chain to from that big chopper. He's an orc after all. Now the shooter itself came with kind of just one big ammo box. Now I didn't like the one big ammo box. It just looked like a lunch box, to be honest with you. I expected it to be full of Dairy Lee triangles and, you know, Lunchables, and I'm not sponsored by Dairy Lee, by the way. I can't think of other things. Kit Kats, see? But it didn't look very good. So I used 2 of the ammo boxes off the big shooters on the, I think it was from the battle wagon, because you've got a left-hand feed and a right-hand feed. And that way you can have one on either side of the gun. I just thought it looked much better. Although I've always had a bit of a bugbear about triple-barreled weapons only getting fed one lot of ammo. If it's got 2 barrels, it should have 2 lots of ammo, and I know this one's got 3, but you know what you do. But I just thought that looked pretty cool. It's a big chunky thing. It looks like it should be mounted on a pintle, like a truck gunner or something, but he's a big feisty lad. He can carry it with one hand. Now I've put beards on a few of my Ork models before. I quite like doing it, to be fair. Although I'll be honest with you, as I was doing this one, that tash was not me best work. I was never really very happy with it. I felt like he had 2 croissants stuck to his top lip and they kind of wrapped around his head as opposed to being a tash. So, you know, that's what it was. And I guess just to point out, I wasn't 100% happy with it. There he is, stood on a bit of slate from my back garden and some other little rocks and skulls and what have you. Put a bit more effort into the base on this one than I normally do, to be fair. But I'll tell you what I've done at this point. I'd put him on the windowsill just to let his green stuff dry, I suppose. I can't remember what it was for, the green stuff or possibly the base. Something was drying, so I put him out of the way on the windowsill. And I found out, by chance, I think he's got a cracking silhouette. He just looks absolutely mint. I mean, that's a big old axe. It's dynamic. He's got his knife handle sticking out. I just think that's a cracking silhouette, that. Consider just painting him black, you know, that really black paint. So he just always looks like a silhouette. But that would be a bit rubbish. So here he is, primed. Obviously primed in High Coat Matte Black Primer. And I've also picked out some browns. Now, as soon as you stick a primer on a model, especially if it's made up of a few different materials like plastics and green stuffs and resin, it sort of does pull it together a bit. You can see more like where it's going to end up. I sometimes give them a very light dry brush of a grey just to help the details stand out more as well, and it takes some of the gloss out the primer can leave on. It is a matte primer, but it can sometimes look a little shiny. No problems painting on it, but if you give it a bit of a dry brush, it just helps your eye a bit, especially if you've got some bright light shining on it while you work. Now, unfortunately, as I've recorded this stage, I've then done a typical drunken orc thing and then went on to apply the next levels of painting, which is to say it's painted. So just to give a quick overview, as best I can remember here, the skin tone I used for this was the usual, was it Warflesh, Bealtan green wash, and then I mixed a little bit of Warflesh in with, I think it's Warboss green, but I think I was actually using Goblin green from Vallejo. A little bit of Warflesh in, just a bit, dark it down a bit, then painted most of it except the recesses with that. And then again with just a neat Goblin green, and then mixed that in with Skarsnik green and just worked on some highlights, and then just Skarsnik green, and then Skarsnik green mixed with Krieg khaki for some more highlights, and then finally just a bit of Krieg khaki on its own. It's a very, very pale green for an orc, but I do like it. If you keep if you just use it for the highlights, you still get plenty of that really vibrant avocado green that I like from the orc skin. Now, I haven't finished the metallics at this point. You see, the axe is just metallic. It hasn't got any sort of detail or weathering or colour on it. And the shooter's pretty basic as well, to be fair. So there's still a few things to do here. And there he is from the back. So again, he's got the yellow and red stripy pants, just a leather waistcoat and a red shirt underneath. He is obviously Freebooter, but I mean, you know, I didn't put any sort of iconography on him, so you could use him as whatever you want, really. But if you have a look at his tash here, he's got that big croissant tash. I was happy enough with the beard. It's nice and flowy. It looks like it's even catching the wind a bit. You know, those old squig hairs of his. But his tash, no, wasn't happy with. So, and I've not done this before either. With a model which was 90% finished painting, I give him a tashectomy and pulled his tash off and replaced it with this tash. Same thing, but with green stuff. I just wanted little curly twists. It looks like he waxes his tash somewhat like that. He obviously takes care of himself with these bare chests and these gold medallions. He fancies himself a bit of a, well, I'm not going to say Lothario. I don't think he's got the equipment, but, you know, he thinks he looks a business. So why not have a wax tash? So the checks on the shoulder pad, I often just paint by hand, just by painting the area white and then painting it on with some thin down black with a very thin brush and just do your grades and then just essentially colour them in. But with these ones, I've started doing something slightly different. Something I do for vehicles and models which are large enough to accommodate it is I bought some masking tape, various thicknesses, but they're all pretty thin to be fair. And I think that stuff's about 3mm. I put a line of it on my cutting board and then I just use a knife and just cut it into little squares. Then with some needle nose tweezers, just stick them on in the checker pattern. Then I get an old brush, bit of white paint, wipe most of it off, and just stipple the part of the armour that's getting the checks. You can really control how much paint you're putting on with stippling, so you can build up some texture with that. You can stipple a bit more around the edges to gain a bit of a highlight, or certain parts if you want some darker or lighter on the others. You've got a lot of control, and then give it a minute or so for it to dry. Doesn't take long because you've been stippling it on, not slapping it on with a roller. And then go back over with the tweezers or a craft knife and just pick the bits of masking tape off. And there you go. You're left with the base colour underneath, which in this case I just left as the armour, and some nice checker work. So there you go, pretty much done. Give him some hazard stripes on his chopper because it's dangerous. And the base, like I say, was just rocks and a bit of slate from the garden. I used a bit of slate because that particular model, he leans back quite a bit. When his feet are flat on the base, it looks like he's going in for a limbo. He's really laying back. So I found a little bit of slate, which just had a relatively flat underside and was sloping enough that when he stands on it, it sort of counteracts the lean and he's more upright. I mean, I say it's a bit of a lean and you think, well, that's not too bad. It's a worrying amount of lean. And I tried running that under the hot tap to try and bend the resin until me fingers were knacking, to be honest. So I couldn't do that because he's just got them big chunky thunder thighs, you know, he ain't budging there. So yeah, see, that was offset just with the bit of slate, and that was just all painted black and then dry brushed up with some greys, some tufts and skulls added as well. And there's his arse, tucked into the back of his boots. Needs to do more squats. Not like Leagues of Volta squats, just, you know what I mean. And of course, the obligatory ultramarine helmet. So that was my first commission. I sent it off, and Carl got back in touch and said he'd received it, and he was going to give it to his mate on his birthday, which was in August, so I left it for a bit. I didn't want to do this video and spoil any surprise. And he got back in touch recently and said he took it to his mate, he was blown away by it, you know, he was over the moon. It went down really well. So that's nice, isn't it? I was well chuffed. He's a lovely lad, Carl. And thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to do my first commission piece. I really do appreciate that. So I'll leave you with a few more pics of the model. Not just sort of like held over me grotty little work area, but like, you know, in front of a sheet of white paper. Fancy. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching. And until next time, take care.